Okay, I want you to picture this for a second. The year is 1829. The fastest thing you have ever seen in your entire life is a horse. On a really good day, maybe it's hitting, 15 kilometers an hour? That's it. That is your absolute speed limit. And then, one morning, something totally new appears on the horizon.
It's screaming. It's breathing fire and smoke. It weighs 4 tons, and it just completely shatters every single idea you have ever had about speed. You see, people didn't even call it a machine. They called it a monster. All right, let's get into it. This is the story of how that monster remade our world.
So, that monster, it had a name, the Rocket. And the story of how it came to be? Well, that's pretty much the story of how our modern world was even born. I mean, this thing didn't just change how we get around. It changed, well, everything.
I mean, just look at those numbers for a second. We're not talking about a small improvement here. We're talking about a leap from 15 kilometers an hour to 46. That's not an upgrade, it's a full-blown revolution. A change so big it would completely rewrite the rules for trade, for war, for how our cities grew. It even changed how we think about time itself.
Okay, so you're probably thinking, a vehicle on a track, that's gotta be an 1800s invention, right? Nope, not even close. The idea is actually ancient. It was just, sitting there, waiting for the right moment and the right problem to just explode into life. Believe it or not, this whole journey starts way, way back. We're talking 600 BC in ancient Greece. They had these grooved stone tracks, the Diolkos, to literally haul ships across land. It's a simple idea, but it's brilliant, right? And from there, the concept just slowly evolved over the centuries.
So, fast forward to the 16th century, you start seeing these wooden tracks, called wagonways, popping up in German mines. The miners actually called them Hund, which is German for dog, because of the barking sound the wheels made on the wood. Pretty cool, huh? And this idea spreads over to Britain, where they start using horses to pull the carts. It was fine. Better than nothing, but man was it slow.
But here's where things get interesting. The demand for coal just keeps growing and growing. So the mines have to go deeper and deeper. And deep down in the earth, they hit a brand new problem. A problem that 1,000 horses couldn't fix. Any guesses? Water. The mines were flooding, and that threatened to shut down the entire engine of the early Industrial Revolution.
And it's funny, solving that one single problem, how do we get all this water out of a deep hole in the ground, would accidentally unlock the secret to modern transportation. This is where steam finally enters the picture.
The guy you need to know here is James Watt. In 1765, he has this incredible flash of genius. He figures out that by adding a separate condenser, he could make the steam engines of his day 4 times more efficient. But here's the thing, his goal was super specific. He was just trying to solve that flooding problem in the mines. He saw his engine as a big, powerful stationary pump. The idea that it could actually move, it wasn't even on his radar.
But there was another engineer, a guy named Richard Trevithick, and he had a much more, let's say, reckless and brilliant idea. See, while Watt was all about using safe, low-pressure steam, Trevithick was thinking, hey, what if we crank up the pressure? Like, way up. Make it dangerous, sure, but also make it incredibly powerful. And then, put the whole thing on wheels.
And this is where we get to the tragedy of the pioneer. In 1804, Trevithick actually runs the world's very first steam locomotive on a track. He proved it could be done. But the engine was just too heavy for the flimsy iron rails they had back then. They just kept breaking under the weight. And the sad part? He died totally broke. The man who literally invented the locomotive was forgotten by history. So, the idea was out there, but it needed a different kind of genius to actually make it work in the real world. It needed someone who could take all these scattered pieces, the ancient idea of a track, the high-pressure engine, the massive industrial need, and put them all together into a system that would change everything. And that man was George Stephenson. Stephenson's backstory is just incredible. I mean, he was born into this poor mining family, couldn't even read or write until he was 18. So how did he become an engineering genius? He taught himself, the hard way. He'd go down into the coal mines and take the engines apart, and then put them back together, again and again and again, until he understood them better than the people who built them.
The guy was just relentless. He built his first working locomotive back in 1814. By 1825, he's driving the engine on the world's very first public railway. But his real masterpiece, the thing that changed it all, came in 1829. There was this huge competition called the Rainhill Trials, basically a bake-off to find the absolute best engine for the first major passenger line.
So Stephenson enters his new engine, the Rocket, and it didn't just win, it absolutely dominated. It reached speeds that both terrified and amazed the crowds. The contract was his. The railway age had officially begun. But there's a tragic footnote here. On its opening day, a member of parliament actually became the first person ever killed in a railway accident, struck by the rocket itself. It's a stark reminder, right? Progress always has a cost.
After the rocket's triumph, well, the floodgates just burst open. Britain, and soon the entire world, was gripped by what historians call railway mania. Suddenly, everybody wanted a piece of the action.
And the results were, wow, they were immediate. The network just exploded. I mean, in only 2 decades, the amount of railway track in Britain more than doubled. This iron web was literally stitching the country together in a way that had never, ever been possible before.
So what did this actually mean for regular people? Well, think about it like this. A journey from, say, Manchester to London that used to take 4 agonizing days by horse-drawn coach, it could now be done in about 4 hours. Distance itself, for the first time in all of human history, was starting to collapse.
And check this out. Here's a fact that always blows my mind. Railways literally invented modern time. I'm serious. Before trains, every town and village had its own local time, set by the sun. But you can't run a train timetable that way, right? It'd be chaos. So in 1847, the railway companies got together and synchronized all their clocks to Greenwich Mean Time, and pretty soon, the whole world followed suit. Of course, this revolution spread all over the globe, and in a place like colonial India, it had this really complex 2-sided legacy. On the one hand, yeah, the British built the railways to tighten their grip, to move troops faster and ship out resources like cotton. But on the other hand, they accidentally connected a massive, sprawling subcontinent. And this allowed nationalist leaders to travel, to organize, and eventually to help forge a shared Indian identity. And the scale of that legacy today? It's just staggering. Every single day, Indian Railways carries 23 million passengers. To put that in perspective, that's like moving the entire population of Australia every 24 hours.
You know, when you really look back at it all, this entire Iron Revolution, from a simple flooded mine to a global transport network, it was all driven by this one simple, obsessive belief. A belief held by people like George Stephenson. They just looked at a horse struggling on a muddy road and thought, there has to be a better way.
Progress is built by the obsessed, right? It's built by the people who just refuse to accept the world as it is. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. What's the monster of our time? What's the new technology that's showing up right now that seems both a little terrifying and absolutely full of promise, something that's ready to remake our world all over again?